we are so close to having secured our second sponsor.
So close.
But
It's good.
until then, this podcast is brought to you by Danny and Travis from Athlete Performance Solutions.
Nice. We got a sponsor.
They actually get shit done. They're the people that are behind Nike weightlifting. They told me not to be too vulgar with my commercial. I told them that's their fault for not sending me something written. But we have and always will be supported by them unless they try to dump us, in which case we'll burn their houses down.
Yeah, we'll cry. Maybe threaten to kill them.
Yeah.
But we just got approved for iTunes, so you can find the
big
Strength and
news.
Philosophy podcast
Big
on
news.
iTunes. We did submit for explicit content, just so you're aware.
Because I say the F word sometimes.
Sometimes.
Maybe. Today we have a hell of a podcast coming your way. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a sport performance facility and all the things that entails. The last podcast that we did, we got some pretty good feedback on the subject matter. And as always, people decided they felt like they needed to tell me some more shit that's wrong with me. So that's always fun. I was told I touched my glasses too much.
Right.
And thanks a
Well,
lot.
they are new.
Well, they're new,
They are
and my
newer.
nose is like,
Getting chafed up.
I mean, get the profile thing on YouTube. It's been smashed. Okay, so things that are made for standard fucking noses don't fit this thing.
Right. Deviated septum over
Yeah,
here.
it's been flattened. I've had it reconstructed twice.
Got a nose job?
Yeah, well,
Twice.
when I was like, 12, 13, how old was I? I was in middle school.
I
I
don't
got
know.
the shit beat out of me by an older kid. And
Did you deserve it?
not to that degree,
Oh,
but
okay.
whatever. We all
All right.
take beatings. So anyway, all right. Today we're going to be talking about the sports performance facility that we are and kind of what that entails. A lot of times when we talk about being a sports performance facility, people only think that we work with professional athletes, and that's just not true. At the very most, I think we've had the most professional baseball players I've worked with in one setting was 10. So if you think about building a business around professional athletes, it's kind of a whole different animal.
It is.
Baseball particularly, they're here for like 3 months max, and then they're gone. So our
Very short off season.
yeah, correct. Our training facility hosts a lot of middle school, high school kids, and we'll continue to grow and expand on that in a variety or a plethora of sports. And our gym, although we put out a ton of weightlifting content, is not all weightlifters.
No, not everybody does it, and that's okay.
Correct. And
We still like them.
So we don't recommend weightlifting for everybody that comes in the door, and it's not something that we try to jam down everybody's throat. Just because we like the sport doesn't mean that it's the right application for sports performance.
Correct.
So, for example, actually, I had a good meeting last week, with Sean Wendell. He's the head strength and conditioning coach for the Pacers, and he was like, "Hey, if you were to come in here and work with our athletes, how would you start them snatching?" And my response was, "I wouldn't."
That's
Because it's really just not applicable for an NBA
Right.
athlete who has never snatched before.
right. It's
Right.
It's going to take a little time to learn.
Absolutely. So our job is to find out what's applicable for the athlete and get them what's going to give them the most bang for their buck.
Right.
Most middle school and high school athletes, when they come in, they want to be bigger, faster, stronger, which is great. We do that. And they'll oftentimes, more than not, have a glaring weakness on the strength aspect of things, regardless of sport.
Correct. And
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes not always valued per sport, depending on what it is, right? And I think those kids, primarily come to us, and there's usually a parent that brings them in the door, and they're always trying to get them to the end goal, right? So the goal is to go play college baseball. The goal is to go play college soccer, right? So they just want that. They just want that outcome, and as long as that goal is achieved and that outcome happens, then that's part of it.
Sure.
I think that this weekend for me especially was a huge thing to see youth nationals, like in terms of weightlifting. And we took one athlete to youth nationals, and she was in the bottom of her age group and weight class. She was like bottom 4 or 5, maybe. Maybe she got, somewhere in the middle. But she was weightlifting with a bunch of girls that wanted to weightlift full time. And they were weightlifting full time. And the thing I kept on reinforcing to everybody was that, she does weightlifting 2 to 3 days a week to enhance her other sports. Because, she is 13 years old. And the goal of weightlifting to somebody like that is to enhance their life and not to become it. And if it so happens to become it by their choosing, then, you have to be loyal to the nightmare you've chosen. Right. Once again,
you can Google that one, replay that podcast.
Right. So that just has to happen. But there were a mixture of kids that were there because they just had weightlifting in their life to enhance some other aspect, whether they liked it as part of CrossFit or whether it was fun or whether Dory, where she plays basketball, she's on 2 basketball teams and she weightlifts. I don't know if she could do much more at 13 years old.
Sure. And I just, to drive home the point, we haven't had anybody that's come here that's in that youth or even that high school level that we've said, all right, you're going to do weightlifting and weightlifting is going to be your thing. It's 100% supportive.
Right.
And not all of our athletes are going to do it. So is it applicable for, let's say, a diver or a golfer or somebody like that to snatch? No. Do they need to do it? No. Can they achieve power and stability other ways? Yes. Right now, it's going to be it might be a requisite movement or something we suggest for a sport where it's more applicable. Say, so for example, if you come in and you have a middle school or a high school that's throwing the shot put, jerk is much more applicable for a shot putter than a swimmer or a golfer, for example. Right?
Yeah.
And so then the question kind of becomes, Dan and Dan's, we're 2, I'll say on the larger size of the human spectrum. Okay, so
above average.
Yeah, and it really becomes like when you've worked in an elite setting, it really becomes kind of like I'm a 6'2", not the healthiest 265 I've ever been, but compared to NFL people, I feel really small.
Right.
You're 6 whatever,
6'6".
Busher 6'7".
Right.
So there's big people around, but on the spectrum of humans in the U.S., we're a little bit bigger. We would not be identified as somebody that looks like a golfer, for example.
Probably not.
So the question is then, how in the hell do you know how to help a golfer become better? And my answer is always this: well, we're sports scientists, right? So
this is a laboratory.
It is a lift lab, but not even in the sense of like some people get a degree in exercise physiologists and they think they're a sports scientists, but they really haven't spent much time researching actual sport and actually digging into it. And we're a little bit fortunate to have had some of those experiences, right?
And just learn over the years the entirety of sport, right?
Sure.
So we're not experts in one little area of sport physiology. It's you see the whole picture, and that is the ultimate job of what we do.
Absolutely. So we'll take a look at your sport if we're not familiar with it. Maybe it's we had a kid jump off with a broom the other day. What's the Harry Potter sport?
Quidditch.
Yeah. So, but I'm not familiar with Quidditch, but
trivia for the win. You're not. Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter, by the way, the first book. I'm sure you knew that fact.
Let's stop talking about this.
Okay.
I don't think. Well, anyway.
Dan's being a muggle.
We will look at your sport and your sport needs from a sports science standpoint, and then program or develop a program that works best for your performance. So, for example, the question is, how do you know what I need, and then will this make me better at sport?
Those are the questions to answer.
They're always asked. And we don't make anybody better at their sport. What we do is we try to provide tools and characteristics that help them with their sport. The easiest example I can give you is in American football, right? We can try to get you on the field to the place you want to be faster and through resistance, but we can't guarantee you make the tackle. Does that make sense?
Correct.
So we can make you run faster, and we can make you stronger. So if people are running into you, you have a better chance to push them away or shove them away or whatever, and then to make your play.
Right. Like I said yesterday, this is the preparation aspect, right? The goal is to prepare them to when they step on the field, they can execute those finite skills that are very specific to their position.
Sure.
And they're going to get that specific work in their practice through their position coach, no matter what they're doing. It's like we can't teach somebody to throw a discus better, but we can just provide the general characteristics in the movements that are going to correspond with the action of throwing a discus or throwing a shot put.
Absolutely. And almost every young athlete that comes in, your middle schooler, your high school athlete, I mean, even all the way up through the elite rankings, but specifically middle school and high school athletes, they just generally need to get stronger, get a stronger core. That's like the hot, buzzword that's zipping around the internet for the last 20 years.
You're a functional trainer.
Yeah. So we want to get their functional fitness up, get them stronger, and basically just provide them with a platform where they can move better and have a chance to be as healthy as they can be. So we're going to try to provide these athletes with the best opportunity to be successful, right? And to help them fulfill their goals. So if a kid does come in and their goal is to go play collegiate sports, we want to try to set them up to do that the best that they can. In the best case scenario, we spend 3 to 5 hours with an athlete a week. And if they're trying to perform to go, play in college or even maybe middle school and high school, they're probably going to spend 15 to 20 hours a week total involvement preparing for their sport. So if they're at best spending 5 hours with us, they're probably going to be spending 15 hours working on their sport and their sport skill. So it doesn't make sense for us to do things to try to make them hit a baseball better, right? Because they're going to get that practice time. We just want them, when they make contact with the ball, we want to go a little farther.
Right, and that's been the I guess misperception where like in maybe the past 10, 15 years where that's kind of gone awry in the strength and conditioning setting, where all of a sudden you need to practice the motion of hitting a baseball in the weight room, or you need to practice the motion of throwing a football in the weight room when you have a million other things to work on, and like the time needs to be spent taking care of shoulder health, building their overall strength, working on the core things you talked about to make sure that all their basic fundamental movements that are going to prepare them to do everything else are clean, that they can move through that movement pattern without any major dysfunction, but then also express a certain amount of load once they have a quality movement. So for example, because Michael Macavino, I think, was a great example, came in here, like we increased his back squat. It looked a lot better. The point at which he had any movement dysfunction or technical failure in any of his lifts went up significantly. And I don't think he bench pressed a single time in here with us. We worked on a lot of shoulder stability, worked on a lot of, mechanical, just sort of raw mechanical skills. So when he goes to those specific mechanical skills, he has a great foundation to move.
Yeah. And that foundation, we've been on the other side where we coached and we had incoming collegiate freshmen come to our program, and they were woefully ill prepared to do the things that we wanted them to do at that level. So, we had to back up and catch them up to speed. So one of the best things you can do if you have a middle school or high school athlete out there and they're thinking about making that step to collegiate sport is to prepare them for the training that they're about to embark on, right? So that's a huge component of what we do at the, it's nice when you get a phone call from a collegiate strength and conditioning coach and they have an athlete you work with and they just say thank you. Thank you for providing the basis so I can now have them do X, Y, and Z.
Right. So they can start at square one and not at square zero. And I think, like to back up on that point, if we see it in a younger athlete where, we need to prepare them for a high threshold environment, right? So we're going to slowly build their foundation so their body has the resiliency and it has the overall function to when they go into that higher level environment where like we know that college football is much faster than high school football, and like just the rate at which things occur, the overall speed and the overall size at which the average athlete has is just tremendous. And when you go to the pros, it's just like amazing when you see them move on the field and how fast they can move and cut and stop and turn and everything.
Sure.
So that's an extremely high threshold environment. But if we never prepare that younger athlete to start working toward that level, then they're going to go into that program and be very unprepared. And then they're either going to get hurt because they're not ready for they're not prepared for what's coming, or they're just not going to succeed.
Sure.
And we haven't done them any favors.
Right. And the whole point is to take them and get them ready for the next step and have them prepared for the next level. And when it comes to choosing a sports performance facility, obviously we want you to choose here. But a big reason for that is we've been at all the levels. We know all the increments that happen that are changes that you need to be aware of. So I've had two scenarios. One where a college baseball player from a well-known, nationally contending program,
Who shall remain nameless,
was going to low A professional baseball. So I don't know if you've seen Bull Durham, but think like below that level of baseball. And all of a sudden you go from essentially being big man on campus, having, nice facilities, nice everything, to shitty ballparks where you're trying to eat like peanuts and hot dogs out of the gas station, and you're sleeping on a bus overnight to try to play a game next morning at 11 a.m. On a Tuesday in some 3,000 people town in the middle of nowhere, right? So you're like trying to set your athletes up for the next level. And also I had an athlete that went from high school baseball to professional baseball. And that is like a huge step in like maturity and the ability to manage resources. But my point is not that your kid is going to be the one that goes from high school to the pros or from college to the pros, but you should be working with somebody that understands the progressive nature of the sport that they're in, right? And you say, okay, well, if you haven't participated in XYZ sport, are you sure that like you can prepare them for it or whatever? And the answer is yeah. I mean, like, I never played basketball. I've worked with guys that are in the NBA. I did play football. I worked with guys in the NFL. But once you reach like a certain level of professional sport, there's a lot more commonalities than you think, right? And most of it has to do with sleeping in hotels, not chasing too many girls around, like trying to be reasonable with your nutrition. Right? If you can hit the weights a little bit. Good. So, that's kind of the reality of the nature, or the you know what I'm saying,
right?
It's the reality of it,
right?
The nature of the beast.
The nature of the beast.
So, I think one thing that's interesting too, if you said, all right, Dan, pick a sport that is furthest from what you're interested in, and I will pick two.
Tell me.
And when I say furthest from what I'm interested in, like what you think I would pursue. One would be swimming, okay? And the other one would probably be golf, okay? So truth be told, I've never played a single hole of golf in my life. I have, one of my buddies hit golf balls off a tee. I've tried to shoot them with shotgun. I used a golf club.
Were you successful?
No.
Okay.
I used a golf club to knock off a mailbox once.
Okay.
In high school, statute of limitations, probably okay.
Right.
So
that one.
my experience is sub Happy Gilmore, right? It's just non-existent. But I did play baseball reasonably well. And one thing that I found that was just like really cool about baseball is I started power cleaning and noticed that all of a sudden, like, I learned how to use my hips and I hit the ball and it just went so much farther. All of a sudden there's a home run machine.
Wow.
And it was not that, like, power cleaning is not a rotational twisting movement of swinging a bat or a golf club.
It's not.
But you understand how to use your hips and you understand what that extension feels like. That translates to sport. Like, I can, in some ways, relate and feel what a golfer feels or kind of what they need to feel, right? The other one being swimming. Most people would not guess this.
You're a minnow, not a shark.
I'm a whale. But I did do a sprint triathlon one time because I thought I just needed to experience it.
Right.
I almost drowned. Obviously, I didn't, unbeknownst to me.
Got water in that good old deviated septum and that big old honker.
Yeah, exactly.
How you die.
So anyway, I spent some time with some open water swimming. I also, leading up to that, I spent some time training in the pool, and it was just a whole nother world. And I got a whole new respect for swimmers and like their adaptations and things like that. And I am a fairly avid bike rider. I'm becoming more and more avid about it the older I get.
Recreational cyclist.
Absolutely. But my point there is you need to ask questions about your coach, about what they've practically experienced as an athlete and what they've experienced in an educational and in a coaching setting to try to find the setting that's right for you. And ideally, you find a coach that has a some sort of coaching resume, meaning years, hopefully, in the industry or the field. You hope that they have an academic background. Yeah. And then if they've practically competed in the sport that you have and really understand the needs and the demands of the sport, then that's probably kind of maybe like the trifecta of what a coach can be. But it's not necessary. It's not necessary that the coach was super successful in the sport.
Right? Perfect example right here. Like with the last two baseball players we had in here, I mentioned that I quit T-ball. Like I retired from T-ball at 6 or maybe 5 or 6.
How's retirement been?
Right. Retirement's been great. They started, that was probably around like the steroids era, like in baseball. So I was
saw the path.
Right. Like I saw the path that was going down, and I was like, I think I'm okay. No, like I think I'm just gonna quit before it gets started. And I get often made fun of unfairly for my lack of athleticism, which is actually untrue. However, I provided the programming, and I was able to convey the message to these baseball players of what they needed to do, how this is going to help, what they should feel, how it's going to translate to when they go to throw the baseball, how they rotate, etc.
Sure.
Right. So like somebody that, I think I tried to hit a softball back in 2010, maybe. It was at the softball diamond at Purdue with Coach Marr, who was a 2-time Olympian or 1-time Olympian, something like that. Anyway, she'd been in the Olympics when softball was in it. She won a gold medal.
She has a gold medal.
She crushed it. She was like lobbing me softballs. I couldn't hit a single one.
She's insane.
She got pissed, I think, at a certain point. It was just like,
you suck so bad.
Yeah, it was basically like, it's like, you suck so bad I can't help you. Right? And like,
you're so bad, go home.
Right? That's pretty much what I got. And I was kind of okay with that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let this be the judgment of the person that I am. But,
how about a
I recovered.
How about a more relative example, Dan? Not to fucking get on your softball tangent, but recently, obviously your background's as an endurance athlete. Mm-hmm. The last 2 years you've been coaching more weightlifters. Right. In the last, I would say at least year, maybe more, you've consistently followed the Levels training program. Right. And it's been like this experiment and test to see like if you can handle the training demands of that sport. And that's kind of the similar concept of me and being on a bike and getting a better understanding for like endurance athletes. We kind of have a little role reversal there.
Right.
And so, but like, okay, when Dan Brown says we're snatching 8 triples on the minute, like what that feels like.
Yeah.
And hell is the answer, right? And maybe we're doing it for a certain reason, and it's like, is this unreasonable? Are we getting like what we want out of it? So the take-home message is you need to have the coach that's willing to experiment,
right,
and try, and not just say do this because I read it on a website, or do people read books anymore? I don't know.
But I mean, like, that's been over the years, right? I think I gave up on the softball one, which is perfect. But, in terms of running hills, carrying sandbags, doing powerlifting, doing Olympic lifting, doing all of it, like, that's, it's been an experiment for the past 12 years or so for me, like, ever since I started coaching. Like, try this new thing, even try bodybuilding at a certain point, see if I can get jacked.
I
Right?
mean,
I mean, not all of us have benched 400 pounds, but like,
it
I
was
know what-
405, Dan.
Okay, sorry.
And it was raw, and I wasn't doing it in supportive gear, and I was young, and I wanted to experience that.
Okay.
Yes, for those of
And
you
you did.
listening, I know
And you
that
did.
a 405-pound bench press is not the end of the world, or not like, the end all be all, but for somebody that really didn't give a shit about bench pressing, I stuck with the process to bench 405, and basically as soon as I did it, I quit. But I
On to the next thing, though.
right, and you know what? 405, that was my max, right? And I know what it was like to just be sitting there with 405 pounds laying across your chest,
Mhm.
right? It was a certain experience, right? I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to coach. As a coach, you have to be willing, or had to have been willing, to experiment with different ideas of training, different modalities, and kind of figure out what works and what can you best convey, with your athletes. A good example is everybody that starts Olympic weightlifting. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people start Olympic weightlifting. They get a certain pain on the backside of their shoulder, and it comes and goes when they clean. It hurts, but as soon as they jerk, it feels fine, right? You all know what I'm talking about. But that, as soon as they start explaining, it's like, oh yeah, that's from this. It'll go away. It's always from swinging snatches around, and I just know that pain because I had that pain, right? And with our combined experience with the plethora of sports we worked with, I can't think of a sport we haven't worked with. So when people are like, oh, should I come to Lift Lab Sports Performance for my hockey or gymnastics or whatever, I can't think of anybody that's just like, no, we haven't worked with that sport.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, maybe some like badminton.
But tennis, I mean, there's just so many
Right.
similarities. I know that
Dodgeball.
some
ESPN HBO show.
Yeah, right.
Like Obscure Sports Quarterly.
right.
Things like
And on this line of being a sports performance coach, we're lucky. Well, I shouldn't say that. We weaseled our way in to having that experience because we figured that we needed it,
Mhm.
right? So we can, we talk about backgrounds and all that other kind of shit. But at the end of the day, I knew that I wanted to coach. You knew that you wanted to coach. We want to coach a lot of athletes. The best way to coach a lot of athletes is in a collegiate setting. We have just about every sport, men and women, and everybody always needs help. That's the athletes and the coaches. The strength and conditioning coaches are often just swamped with athletes, and they'll tell you, just coach these two things and go over there in the corner and work with, Betty Sue on keeping her knees out when she squats.
Right.
And you do that year. I mean, I did it for over 3 years. It just grinding it out day in and day out with tons of athletes, tons of sports, going to practices, going to events, just getting a feel for the vastness of it.
And sometimes, or most of the time, for free.
Yeah, I'm going to say I lost money the 3 years I worked at Purdue. I mean, the pay is
reverse employment.
Right, correct. It is I think they keep you just below poverty, below the poverty line.
That's another lesson to teach you at that point. I
Yeah,
guess.
and this is the point in the show where I will give my wife credit because she, at the time she was my wife, but my lady friend, she was financially basically supporting me while I pursued my passion, right? But yeah, you got to do that. And so when people are looking at Lift Lab on the outside, they see all these videos of snatches and clean and jerks, and they're like, oh, if I come in and I'm an athlete, am I going to be snatching? I don't know how to snatch. The answer is probably not. And we don't have a lot of our sports performance athletes snatching.
No.
We really don't, because we don't necessarily think that's the best way to train them for their sport. Good.
Correct. Good.
Dan, do you have anything you'd like to offer? I try not to touch my
Man,
glasses.
no,
I try not to interrupt you.
did
I'm sure
okay.
people are still going to talk shit. Maybe from a certain Lisa Wood, even.
Probably.
Tell me I'm ugly today or something.
Something like that.
I'd like to welcome Brian back. He was out
Yeah.
gallivanting, I mentioned last time.
Yeah. Did Brian make it in the shot?
His arm got it in
His
there
arm with the kill
with the kill clip.
Sneak around.
we're
Say
glad to
hello.
have him back. He
Yeah.
was flying American Airlines, got hung up, 15-hour
Sleeping
shit
in
show.
airports,
Girlfriend,
whatever.
girlfriend lost her mind. Brian had to detain her so the cops wouldn't take her away. It's great. So we're glad to have him back. though.
Classic.
Yeah.
I'm like, what else did you expect?
Exactly. Thanks again to Travis and Danny, Nike Weightlifting. We will put a link up so you can click on it and go buy some shit. And we will see you again soon.
Signing off.